After a quiet week at One Jets Drive, the New York Jets have an extra day to prepare to take first place in the AFC East. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Jet Nation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Terman and Chris Schubert. No Glenn Naughton tonight. He was feeling sick, maybe sick and tired of this team, but no, he said he couldn't get the voice strength for this podcast, and that's understandable. Inexcusable, but understandable. So the CBA is tallying that one up for a Glenn fine down the road. We're gonna have to see where all these tallies are at for all these fines, because somebody's got to pay up at some point. How are we doing tonight, Chris?
I would argue a double fine, because the reason why we didn't do the show yesterday is because, and I'm going to just tell tales out of school here because I can, and he's our good friend and he's our podcast host, but it's because he fell asleep. Like, Dylan and I are sitting around waiting for the link to come over from Glenn, and I was running a little bit behind, so the link never came. And then Glenn texted us like an hour later and was like, "Yeah, sorry guys, I fell asleep." So I would argue, and I'm not the arbiter on this, I just put it out there for the Jet Nation universe to decide. I think it's a double fine, because I think it's a fine for yesterday, and then I think it is a secondary fine for missing today's show. And I did not know that was going to be your cold open today about it being a quiet week. So that's hence the laughter coming from my end. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the New York Jets without somewhat of a circus. And the tent is wide open. They're selling tickets, and everybody can gather inside and come see the show on Monday night against the Buffalo Bills. And we've got a lot to get into. We've got a Haason Reddick update. We can talk about this head coaching change. Dylan, I know you haven't gotten a chance to share your thoughts. There's a play calling change as well. There's just a lot to get into. And probably the best place for us to start, Dylan, is for you to finally, in podcast form, be able to share your thoughts on the fact that Robert Saleh, 5 games into the season, with a 20-36 record, fired as the Jets head coach, and Jeff Ulbrich, Brick as he is known, has been named the interim head coach.
Yeah, so I don't think it's any secret, obviously, that I've been a huge supporter of Robert Saleh on this podcast. But with that being said, I feel like over the last 2 weeks, you heard even people like me who have supported him to the highest of levels, that sound out of their voice started to change a little bit. And like the feeling coming out of Denver obviously changed. And then the feeling coming out of Minnesota certainly like stung even worse. I think the loss to Denver hurt worse for the team, but it felt worse. The vibes. I mean, I'm sitting there watching the game. It's obviously early. Everybody gets up. You got up even earlier because you're closer to the West Coast. So you're like, it's like 7:30 your time when the game kicks off. If they would pan to Saleh after panning to a couple other players on the sidelines, whether it was Minnesota's or our sidelines or even fans or whatever, everyone looks excited, cheering, alert. They pan to Saleh. His eyes are like 3/4 of the way shut, and like it looks like he's just like rubbing his eyes, just got out of bed. I'm like, dude, you got to wake up. Like, we're 9 minutes into the second quarter. Your team is down 10-0, and you look asleep at the wheel. So it's not the vibes you really want. And so, no, I'm not surprised that this happened. We knew he was on the hot seat. When it happened in the season, yes, we should all probably be surprised because it's the first time it's ever happened. But to say Saleh getting fired is a surprise, no. Like, I'm sorry. If you and I did our job as bad as he has done his job for the Jets for the last 3 years and 5 games, we wouldn't have gotten the chance to play these 5 games this year. We probably would have been cut short from our job a long time ago. Luckily, we're halfway decent at our job. I know you do a good job with your postcasts for the Mets and Jets, so check that out for sure if anybody's into the Mets and Jets postcasts. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. You're in the middle of your season. You have high expectations. You're supposed to go to the Super Bowl or at least a deep playoff run, and that's something that you alluded to on the pre-show. And it's like now everything gets turned on its head. I know people want to point to Rich Bisaccia in 2021 with the Raiders when Gruden resigned / was about to get fired, and he took them to the playoffs. Sure. I don't know, man. Like if we get that out of the Jets this year, I feel like we might be lucky because, yeah, we still look on paper to be one of the most talented teams in the league. But where do you go after firing your coach? Yeah, you might get that interim coach bump for a game, 2, 3, maybe. But then from there, you got to galvanize this team, and you really got to pull something out of your hat if you're Jeff Ulbrich to make this work. And I understand he's a different type of coach than Robert Saleh is just in the 3 days that we've seen him. And we can break down the 3 days that he's been in his new role. But I don't know. Even for me, like the eternal optimist, and like I feel like I was even more optimistic than Saleh at times. Like it hurts to see that like we're probably a 9, maybe a 10 win team at best at this season. And like I don't know, it's pure copium at this point, but like we're the team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs. That's where I'm at. Like you got to hope that Rodgers just, rallies the troops and we're the 7th seed and nobody wants to face us. That's really all I'm kind of rallying myself around. And we're playing for first place in 4 days and 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is. And I can't, I have a hard time saying the Jets are going to win. I mean, after what we've seen on the field for the last eight quarters, really 7 quarters at least. I mean, it's just been bad. So I don't know. It's tough. It's a really tough situation for the team to be in, but Woody makes his decisions. And I feel like you got embarrassed in London in front of some of his, co-workers, so to speak, when he was the ambassador. And they don't like that stuff. When you're getting embarrassed in front of all your friends and they're probably not laughing directly at you, but they're saying how good or bad your product is on the field and you're down 17-0 and it doesn't look like there's a glimmer of hope and you walk out of your owner's box. It's just the vibes weren't good. And that's when decisions like this get made. I'm just glad that the decision we're going to get into next was also made, because you can't just make one singular decision and expect things to change. There needed to be a ripple effect and a fallout process, so to speak. And we're getting to that point, and we just now have to see how these work.
Yeah, I'll allow everybody to go back and watch the immediate reaction podcast that I did with Glenn for my full thoughts. I hate the process of the firing, but here we are. This was probably the right decision. Just the process of how we got to this result 5 games into the season is not necessarily something that I could be on board with. But I will add this, and you alluded to it a little bit about something I said in the pre-show. It is one thing to have expectations as a podcaster, as a fan, as a blogger, as somebody who covers the team in whatever capacity you may cover the team or follow the team or be a fan of the team or a content creator around the team. That there's a level of expectation that you're allowed to put on it, right? Dylan can come up here and say, I think this team can win a Super Bowl. I can say, hey, I think this team's good enough to be a wild card team and make the playoffs, but I don't see them going very far. And we're allowed to have that open and honest debate. But when you trade for Aaron Rodgers and you make the moves that the Jets made in the offseason, there is one expectation in that building, a one singular expectation, and that is to win a championship. And I'm not going to tell you something that you don't already know, but no team has ever won a Super Bowl after firing their coach during the season. It's never happened, because if you fire your coach in the middle of the season, it's because you're not living up to expectations. And I have a real tough time getting around to the place that all of a sudden the 2024 New York Jets and the New York Jets franchise, that is such a well-run, established organization that everybody looks to model their franchises after, is going to be the organization that bucks that trend. And so with that being said, where does that leave us? Well, in my mind, it leaves us right back to the expectations that I had for this team, is that they're going to be a fringe wildcard contender. They might be able to sneak in the back door as a wildcard team, and then that's probably it. They're probably not going to be able to be a team that goes on a run in the postseason. And then what did you do all of this for? And that's the worst place to be. And I use the analogy with Dylan in the pre-show, and I'll use it again here. If the New York Jets were a car, if they were a vehicle, we just blew a tire. We've now pulled over to the side of the road, and there's no spare and there's no donut. They're stuck. This team is stuck in the version that they are. A new coach isn't going to fix this. A interim head coach isn't going to fix this. A new play caller isn't going to fix this, and I'll share my thoughts on that when we get there. But there is nothing about this team that is fixable. They traded for a 40-year-old quarterback who wants to do things a certain way. They're going to continue to do things that way. It's either going to work or it's not. And through 5 games, the results are mid. The results are very middling. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. That's where we are in 2024 with the New York Jets. And so we can be along for the ride. We can see how it goes. There are going to be weeks where I think this team's going to be able to win. There are going to be weeks where I think this team's going to lose. And we're just going to have to let the season play out. But I think personally for me, if you were somebody who had the expectations of this team being a championship contender and this team being a Super Bowl contender, I think you have to take those. You have to rip up the paper. You have to throw it in the trash. I just don't think we can honestly have that conversation at this point. And it's not because of Robert Saleh. It's not because they fired Robert Saleh. It's just because a championship caliber team doesn't do this. A championship caliber team doesn't go through the bumps and the roller coaster ride that this is. Even the teams, and Dylan, you mentioned one in the pre-show that we did that nobody heard, just you and I having a conversation in the pre-show. You talked about the 07 Giants.
Mm-hmm.
That team just kind of was middle of the road throughout the year, but they didn't fire their coach. They didn't need to find a spark. They were just a team that kind of got hot at the right time and were able to get in there.
Right.
The Jets, they could get hot at the right time, but they fired their head coach. They've changed play callers. In a matter of 48 hours, they've changed their head coach. And I got into a heated debate with somebody on Twitter about this. They lost their DC because their DC now has to be the head coach. So
Right.
even if he is going to still be the DC and call plays, I think there is a loss there in terms of the efficiency on that side of the ball. And you change play callers. So in 72 hours, all three mainstays of your team, DC, OC, and head coach, are all different. You can tell me that Nathaniel Hackett is still labeled as the offensive coordinator on the coach's page. That's great. The three main parts of this team all change in 72 hours. So it's just disappointing. And Dano says, do you believe that Saleh could orchestrate a Super Bowl run? No. But that's why my expectations before the year were that this team was going to potentially just get into the playoffs in spite of the coaching. There is nobody. Dylan will attest to this. If Glenn was here, he would attest to this. There is nobody that raised the banner and said, this team is not going to go far with Robert Saleh as the head coach. He's going to cost this team games more than me.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time last summer. I spent a lot of time during the year last year when the games didn't matter because this team was spiraling out of control because they lost Aaron Rodgers, and said, just wait. Just you wait for this coach and this coaching staff to have to coach important, meaningful football games. Watch what it looks like. Watch how bad it is. Well, we saw it through 5 games, and Woody Johnson got rid of what he thought was a problem in Robert Saleh. But Dano, I will respond to you in kind, and then we could talk about Ulbrich becoming the interim head coach.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if I believed that Robert Saleh could orchestrate a Super Bowl run. The problem with all of this is Woody Johnson's decision-making process. Because you're asking me that question, and I don't mean this maliciously, you're asking it tongue-in-cheek, because you're saying that you didn't believe it either. And I didn't believe it. Dylan didn't believe it.
Right.
Glenn didn't believe it. We all didn't believe it. The problem I have with it is, are we to say that Woody Johnson believed it up until these 5 games occurred? That's the problem I have with it. That's the issue that I think is there, because either you should have made a move in the summer, or you should have given him longer than 5 games. Now, if you're telling me that Woody Johnson needed these 5 games to come to the determination that Robert Saleh couldn't orchestrate a Super Bowl run, I don't know what you were waiting for, dude. You had, 18-33. That was his record up until the start of the season. So you needed 5 games to change your mind? And so, again, the process here was flawed. They were stuck. The real decision should have been made in the summertime to change head coaches. They didn't, and here we are. And now Jeff Ulbrich is going to take over and be the interim head coach of this team.
And I don't want to double down and make this all about Woody, but when he comes out and says this is his decision and his decision alone, obviously you have to talk about his perspective on it. And you're talking about his decision making and the flaws in it. And I'm not saying Ulbrich is not deserving of being the interim head coach. Obviously, when you look at the landscape of this coaching staff, it's really just him or Ron Middleton, in my opinion, that you're going to hand the keys over to for the rest of the season. But when you hear the report that Woody only really came around to the idea of Ulbrich as the interim head coach when San Francisco called asking for him as their defensive coordinator, it's like, Woody, how do you not understand that you have a good coach already in-house? You have an external franchise telling you that you have a good coach. I feel like that's just flawed in itself too. If you've watched Ulbrich throughout, his tenure as a Jet, even with the Senior Bowl stuff, I feel like he's done nothing but show that he's capable of at least occupying a role of head coach somewhere. Maybe it's not in the NFL, maybe it is a college team, but now he's going to get his chance. So I don't know, the decision-making process, just like you said in the reaction show, it stinks from Woody Johnson, but he could have gotten all these things. Firing Saleh is the right choice, and Ulbrich is the right guy to promote. All those things could be true, but you shouldn't have done it now, is what I'm trying to get.
Please, I'm going to do the thing. 2 things can be true.
That should be the name of our show.
The process could stink, and firing Robert Saleh is still a good decision.
Yes, exactly.
And Dano says, no, I wonder if he was talked out of firing him before for the argument of him never having a quarterback. That is the point I'm trying to make. The process here stinks.
Yeah.
The process here is really bad. And yes, Robert Saleh, I think, as a head coach, from not an X's and O's, from a philosophical perspective, right? The slow starts are on him. The idea that he wants to play this old school, grindy, we're going to beat you 20-17.
Yeah, race to 20.
Race to 20. That is an old school, in my opinion, not winning version of football. You cannot do that in 2024. The problem with it is it can be the right decision to fire Robert Saleh. And now here we sit, and there's no good options.
Yeah.
changing play callers is the right decision. There's no good options. And again, this goes back to process. This was all stuff we all talked about in the offseason, in the summer. The variables didn't change here. I don't think anybody, Dano, Tony, the GM, who I see chatting, Dylan, me, Glenn, anybody listening to this in the podcast afterwards, I don't think there's anybody that saw something during these 5 games that was different than what we saw during the 18-33 version of Robert Saleh. He didn't all of a sudden do something completely unorthodox. He didn't all of a sudden walk into this year and now his game management was just totally different and it was abysmal and it was costing the Jets game. No, he coached these 5 games the same way he coached the 18-33 version of himself. And that's where I have a problem with it. And so, again, it's hard because the expectations in that building are to win a championship. You just fired your head coach. You moved your DC out of the DC position to be the interim head coach, and now you've changed play callers. And you expect me to think that the 2024 New York Jets are going to be the team that bucks the trend and is the first team to win a Super Bowl after firing their head coach in the middle of the year. Listen, there's got to be somebody that goes through the door first. I get it. Somebody's got to be the first for everything. There was a first man on the moon. And before that, everyone said, no one could go to the moon. But I just don't expect it to be the New York Jets and this franchise that is so poorly run. Because, again, it's about process, and the process here stinks.
What's that saying? Maybe the Jets know something that the rest of us don't. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think for me, again, like I'm a big person of like when I'm watching the game and then when I rewatch the game, especially on the broadcast angle, I look at like body language and demeanor and all those types of things, especially with Aaron Rodgers. That's something like when you saw the shove hug dilemma, that's something that you have to like understand this team and like the vibes of this team to know. And there was a point in the game where Garrett Wilson was on the sideline getting coached up. I think it was Sean Jefferson and like another assistant coach and maybe a water person was over there giving him some water. And then Saleh was like standing off to the side, like trying to like ease his way into the conversation or whatever. And then as soon as they were done with Garrett, he gave him this weird like dap hug thing that was really just awkward. And like Garrett didn't really like respond to it after being completely alert and responsive to the coach. So like it just felt like the vibes from player to Saleh were starting to dwindle a little bit. And that was probably the Denver game that just lopped on into the Minnesota game. And like when you travel across the pond like that, everybody's like, I don't know, I feel like cranky in a way. And like that's how it felt. The Jets were sleepy and cranky in that game. And like that's on the head coach. Those are all things that fall on the head coach. So hopefully with Ulbrich, and we can start talking about like what he's going to do from now on. I think Ulbrich needs to like have this, we're going to be alert, like almost like a caffeine shot type of energy to the start of these games, at least, because we can't be the sleepy Jets for the first 15 minutes of every football game, or we're not going to win many. Like you said, we probably won't even be a wild card team if this slow starts continue. I'm going to ask this question to you, but I want to answer it for myself first. What in the 3 days is the best thing you've seen Ulbrich do as the interim head coach? And I'll give you some time to think while I say mine. I think it's the social media. Like I haven't seen much from any person on the Jets social media wise, unless it's like retweeting something, but like nobody's, going back and forth with fans anymore. Sauce even said he deleted his social media. So something in the building changed. Maybe it's not directly to Ulbrich, but I feel like that goes in my book as a credit to him that he got these guys offline in a year where they probably shouldn't be online as much as they should. And I understand, if I was 22 in their position, I'd be online way more than I am now. And as a 30-year-old, I'm admittedly online way too much. So I get it, but I think that's one of the biggest accomplishments so far for Ulbrich from a non-football perspective too. So I don't know, that little thing to me just speaks volumes, because I feel like that was something that Saleh let them be themselves, but almost to a fault. And that goes with the friendship type stuff.
This is going to be a lame answer, and I apologize in advance for how lame of an answer that it is. But this is a real tough spot for Jeff Ulbrich, right? Robert Saleh brought him here, right? Robert Saleh wanted him to run the defense. And we've heard is that Saleh doesn't call plays on Sundays. This is Jeff Ulbrich's defense. He runs the show on the defensive side of the ball. And so your side of the ball is doing great for 5 games. Your side of the ball has been doing great probably ever since you got here. It's been excellent. And now the guy who brought you here gets fired, and you've been tapped with the responsibility of taking over this team in a really tumultuous time and being that steady hand, being that guiding force. And I got to tell you, he's handled himself well at the podium. And so that's the thing that I would pick. I just think he has handled a lot of fair questions, a lot of fair criticism that's been thrown the Jets' direction this week, and he has handled it all extremely well. Now, he's coach speak, and the answers aren't great, but he's also not making a fool of himself in a really trying time. He's not saying things that are then forcing him to have to walk it back a day later. He is handling himself well up there at the podium. And I know he does it once a week as defensive coordinator, but when you're the head coach, it's a different responsibility. And when you're the interim head coach, it takes on an even different feel and vibe and tone. And so I just think from that perspective, is it going to lead to wins and victories and X's and O's? They're out scheming the other team. I'm not sure about that yet. But just that little thing, I think he's handled himself very well.
Yeah, and that's a really great thing to point out. And I'm glad that we both chose things that don't directly affect the product on the field on Sundays, because I think that's part of being a head coach, is taking care of the off the field issues too. And the way that he handles the media is great. And I think it's actually funny because as the head coach, you come up with your paper with the injury report and you got a pen and, you want to make sure you get all the names. One, he made sure he got all the names on that list. We know Saleh and his history of giving injuries and like being so bland and like basic about him. He got the whole thing done, and then he forgot it at the podium. He had to like turn around after taking a couple steps and like grab the paper. So it's like you could clearly like visibly see he's still learning on the fly, and it's so cool. But I'm glad that you chose that, because that is important, and that is part of being a head coach. If you can't stand up there every day and talk to the media and then also go back into the team meetings and then lead your team in that same way. And the way he's talking about locking arms and all these penalties that are unacceptable. And I like even the fact that he said, I don't mind the penalties for us being physical, for us, like the little ones here and there, but the inexcusable ones, the pre-snaps and the personal fouls on special teams and specifics, stuff like that. I love that he's, going to hopefully crack down on it. Obviously, we know with Saleh, it's just, we're going to do what we continue to do, and it'll get better. We're going to fix it. That's the type of stuff. And I'm glad that we didn't hear those basic things from Ulbrich. And just going back to like, obviously the Saleh relationship, I'm actually really glad that the first thing he said was, his, appreciation for Saleh before even taking any questions his very first time. So yeah, I think it's just little things like that, we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season. He might be our coach moving forward. He might be our coach next year. But if he's not, I think it's just those little things that give you, optimism that there's a chance that things could get turned around. So we can get into his first official move now, which is Nate Hackett and Todd Downing. Obviously, Nate Hackett gets stripped of his play calling duties. He still remains the official offensive coordinator by title. But Todd Downing, the pass game coordinator and quarterback coach, is now the play caller for the offense. So he will be the one in Rodgers' ear every play. Everybody can take their jokes that Hackett's, the coffee guy or what have you, the clipboard guy. And, maybe that is the best role for him, is just like a supportive offensive type of role. And maybe that is the best way to get the most out of your coaching staff. So I, for one, thought that this was the move that was going to happen. Not Saleh getting fired. I even said it in our group chat. I said, all right, Todd Downing needs to get situational play calling, maybe even full-time play calling, but something has to change. Obviously, the big change was Saleh, then the tertiary change is now Todd Downing. So I'm a little optimistic, although Todd Downing's track record is not good. I'm only optimistic because it's just not Nate Hackett, and I'm tired of – I play chart all the offensive plays. I've been doing this since Zach Wilson's rookie year, and I was really, hoping to see a lot of good stuff with Rodgers on offense, and I'm so tired of writing stick concepts and dragon concepts, which is a slant with a flat. Like, it's just such prehistoric offense with no motion, and I'm not saying Todd Downing is some innovative offensive genius, but we need to move out of the prehistoric era, and now we'll really see, like, is it Rodgers being that stubborn with the offense where he just doesn't want it at all, or is he now going to be as receptive to these moves as now some changes to the offense and some pre-snap looks? So that's the interesting part with Downing for me. I don't have high expectations, but a change was necessary, and I think a little bit better than Hackett is all we need.
Change was necessary. Good on Jeff Ulbrich for making the smart, easy, good first decision as head coach to change up who was calling plays. I think it's a incremental change from where it was, and it's because of a bunch of different factors. Factor number one: Todd Downing, in his time as an offensive coordinator, does not have a expansive resume that just absolutely laps the resume that Nathaniel Hackett has. Right? Todd Downing's resume is not that much better. It's a little better. He's really good in the red zone. That's where he thrives, right? So he's going to be really good down there. And that's going to be a welcome sight for this team to have a little bit more efficiency down there in the red zone. But where I go with this, Dylan, and you're gonna know the phrase that I'm gonna use, and you're gonna understand it, but I'll also enlighten the audience. There's a term that is in the film community right now and in the NFL advanced analytics community called the easy buttons on offense. And those easy buttons are motion and play action. And the reason why they're referred to as the easy buttons is those are the things that create disruption for the defense. It causes eyes to move. It causes people to not be in the right spot. It is the easy way for you to scheme guys open and to get your really talented players in positions to be successful and to make plays. And so they're called easy buttons because they work a lot of the time. They are basically cheat codes to creating offensive efficiency. Now, it depends on the skills players you have. It depends on your blocking up front there. It's not a, one size fits all. Oh, just use more motion and you're immediately going to be good, right? But when you have good players, you have talented players. Now you add in that wrinkle of motion and you're moving Garrett Wilson from one side to the other and you're just forcing the defense to account for a lot of things. It allows you to find cheat codes to be a little more successful. The problem, and I heard Todd Downing talk about how the game plan week to week is going to evolve and what you do for one opponent is going to be different for another opponent. And I agree. And he goes, some weeks that will involve motion. Listen, he said all of the right things and I don't necessarily disagree. The reason why Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers did not get along in Green Bay is because LaFleur believes in motion. He is from a tree that believes in we're going to move people around. We are going to make this so difficult for you to figure out where guys are lining up. We're going to make it impossible for you to figure out where Deebo Samuel is going to be. We're going to make it really difficult for you to figure out where Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs, and we're going to move guys around, and we're going to maybe motion the running back out of the backfield. Now it's somebody else for you to take advantage of, or we're going to move this guy in motion at the snap. Rodgers doesn't like that. Rodgers, good, bad, or indifferent, believes he's played this game at an elite enough level. Get him to the line, have it be incredibly static, and he's going to read the defense. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work in 2024. It doesn't. And so you are not going to see the Jets all of a sudden increase the easy buttons to a magnitude that's going to allow them to reach the peak offensive efficiencies that you see from these other teams. And so, great, Todd Downing can say all the right things, and the Jets can make this change. But the two things that I think would incredibly increase the efficiency for the New York Jets with the skill players that they have is motion and play action. And I'm sorry, but with number 8 at quarterback and him being 40, about to be 41 in 2 months, I just don't see that changing. Now, maybe they surprise me. Maybe Todd Downing comes up with a very creative way to mix it in, and it allows them to create enough off-balance looks for the offense. I'll just believe it when I see it, right? And that's where I'm at with this team. You got to show me something, because I bought in. I picked this team to win, 10, 11 games when we did our playoff predictor win prediction game for the Jets.
Yep.
And I said this team could make the playoffs. And then when you get into the playoffs, who knows what kind of run you go on, right? Through 5 games, you've shown me that you're not that team. You're not the team I thought you were in the summer. You can't find a way to get Malachi Corley involved. Your offensive line that you built with all these great players is just falling apart at the seams and can't protect Aaron Rodgers. Garrett Wilson the only targets we can create for him are an average depth of target of like 3 or 4 yards. We can't create any separation down the field or create any big plays. We have Allen Lazard, who drops passes in big moments. We get Xavier Gibson out there in a wide look in the most key part of the game instead of having Mike Williams. They're just like, you got to show me something. You got to show me you're different. And if we go out and it's the same look, it's the same scheme, then I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy in. And so that's where we're at. Again, an incremental increase, the right decision, things needed to happen in regards to this offensive staff. But I just do not believe it is going to mean a seismic change in the way this offense runs. Now, there is one difference. There is one way that I do think this move matters. And that's if Jeff Ulbrich has a totally different philosophy from Robert Saleh. And unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if Jeff Ulbrich had a similar philosophy to Robert Saleh and saw Robert Saleh fail with that philosophy and said, if I ever got the opportunity, I'm going to adjust from that. Or if he has a different philosophy from Saleh, but Saleh's the head coach, so we're going to go with that philosophy. He has to come in to this with the idea of, I have to go out doing this my way. I can't cater to the quarterback. I can't cater to the play caller. I got to do this the way I want to do it, because this might be my one chance to showcase the world that I'm a good head coach. And I need to show that my philosophy works in today's NFL. And so I think if Jeff Ulbrich comes to the table with a different philosophy, if he pulls Todd Downing and Nate Hackett and Aaron Rodgers in the offensive end of the room and says, listen, guys, what the bleep? What are we doing here? Can we get some urgency? Can we score some points early? Like, let's go. We're gonna dial it up. We're gonna dial up the tempo. We're gonna play fast. We're gonna play urgent. We're not gonna try to get the running game going early. We're gonna open things up with the pass, and then we're gonna complement with the run. Then we're gonna get Brees involved, and then they're gonna try to focus on Brees. Boom, we're gonna hit him for a big play. And if they can start to evolve the offensive philosophy to be more modern, to be more efficient, to have more urgency, then I do think that Todd Downing is a creative enough play designer to be able to get the most out of this team. But that requires a mindset shift that until I see it, I'm not bought in yet.
Yeah, and I think that's really one of the biggest downsides to a Rodgers-led offense is just how static is the word you used. It is. And when you don't have the pre-snap stuff, you don't have the play action stuff, you can't get into your bag, essentially. You can't unlock the full potential of your offense. And that is the one thing, I guess, Mike LaFleur tried to help Zach Wilson with all the motion, maybe, to a fault. He tried to do it too much. But like when you have younger quarterbacks, especially, you need motion at some points to help see man versus zone variations and just help them see a better picture of the defense. Like you said, there needs to be some kind of increase, maybe like a 20% increase is fine. And like some weeks you really bump it up to 30 or 40% more motion on a weekly basis, like he said, based on game plan. But I do think that is the key to this offense. I wrote down 3 words while you were talking, and you pretty much used all 3 of them. But that's got to be the new identity of the offense moving forward: is urgent, physical, and efficient.
Yep.
Those 3 right there. Then we can completely change the talk about playoffs. If you're an urgent offense and you're showing up early and you're putting points on the board early, you're driving the length of the field and finishing a drive with 6 points, that puts the foot on the pedal, helps your defense. It helps all around, obviously. Physicality. We don't have that. We really don't have that on offense.
And I got to tell you, it's surprising.
Yes,
I got John Simpson on my team. I got Morgan Moses on my team. I got Elijah Vera Tucker. I got Tyron Smith. I got guys who want to throw people out of the club. What are we doing? Keith Carter, what are we doing?
All summer long, we talked about how the identity of this football team was changing from a run perspective to a gap scheme, which is a more physical scheme because now we have the dogs to do it. And all of a sudden, we're just not doing it. We're missing assignments. We have bad tight end blocking, and that goes into it.
Listen, folks, do yourself a favor. Go watch the first play from scrimmage for the New York Jets. If you have NFL Pro or NFL Plus Pro, whatever it's called, NFL Plus Premium, if you have it like I do, Dylan can attest to this. I think I spent a good 35 minutes in our group chat just discussing that play. It is some of the worst blocking I think I've ever seen. The play design is brutal. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish with the play. If you want to understand why everybody is so frustrated with Nathaniel Hackett and this team offensively, just go watch the first play this team runs from scrimmage on Sunday against the Vikings. It is abysmal. Brees Hall gets the ball, and he is supposed to follow Olu Fashanu for just days on the right side. He gets the ball, and he immediately... Do you have the screenshot? Can you pull up the screenshot?
I don't. I'm going to try to find it while you're talking.
Because it's in our DMs, and we have a lot of it, because the group chat goes a little wild. But I screenshotted the play, and I sent it to Dylan and Glenn, and I said, what are we trying to accomplish here? Like, what are we trying to do? Because this team just, again, is so committed to a philosophy, and they won't adapt. And here's the other thing, to tie into that while Dylan attempts to try to find this photo on the fly, is they have to stay ahead of schedule. And I think that's a little thing, but it's a little thing that can have a huge difference. Because the more time this team is in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 4, instead of 2nd and 9, 2nd and 11 because of Brees Hall getting stopped in the backfield, and the more time they're in 3rd and short, like 3rd and 5 and fewer, they are going to be able to convert more. Dylan is smiling as if he found the photo, so I'm going to assume that he's going to pull up this photo. And it's a screenshot, folks. So again, you can watch the whole play. But So what are we doing here? What are we doing here? So the play, and if I wish I could draw arrows. Do you have the mouse? Can the mouse, is your mouse able to hover over Breece Hall? I don't think so because I don't see your mouse as it's happening here. But Breece Hall, you see him there at number 20. He's supposed to follow Olu Fashanu out in space. How is he going to do so? Look at what is occurring. Bates has completely missed his block on the left side. Tyron Smith is a revolving door. Tippmann's not doing a terrible job there. Elijah Vera Tucker's not doing all that great either. And so Breece gets this ball, and again, this is just a screenshot, but Breece gets this ball, and he immediately is cutting up field. He doesn't even attempt to go outside. Just a brutal play. Just awful. I spent 25. I didn't even get through the whole game. I spent 35 minutes just on this play. I was so angry.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'll be completely transparent because of all the news that has come out and all the shifting of like the whole coaching staff. I haven't gotten to the all 22 yet, and like I'm scared. Like I have to. I want to chart all the plays. I want to see what goes on, and like the Bates stuff. We went I think it was Ryan Sampson on Twitter. It went viral. All the Bates cut ups and the one play where he literally blocked Jeremy Rucker out of the play it's pitiful. So that goes to your physicality. The tight end blocking, that's poor. I think it was Will Parkinson on Badlands said, just have Alan Lazard be your tight end too. If it's going to look this shitty, truthfully. And like, I get it. Like Devontae Adams is, lingering. We don't know, but especially if you get Devontae Adams, you could use Alan Lazard as your second tight end and just attach him to the line of scrimmage. And he could probably do better than Ruckert and Bates are doing right now. So the physicality needs to change. And then the efficiency. Obviously we know Rodgers, if you're not in the right spot, he's not going to throw it to you. And that is probably a problem. Obviously, with the offense when it's stagnant, you can do that when the offense is still working at a functionable level, but when you're not producing, you have to take what you can get. So that the efficiency just it needs to change so bad. Yeah, I can't even get into the efficiency. Yeah, because Rodgers, there's another nerd stat that we talk about, and it's completion percentage over expected, and 3 out of 4 games, and I don't know what he did against Minnesota, but I'm going to assume it was negative. So 4 out of 5 games for Rodgers had a negative completion percentage over expected, and that accounts for all the drops and spikes and this and that. It takes all that out of there. So that's purely on the quarterback. Not good. Not good when you're in the negatives. And his one game, New England, was 12.7. Denver was a flat 0, but he threw the ball 35, 42, 54 times the last 3 games. That is unacceptable for this offense. 131 attempts for Rodgers in the last 3 games is ridiculous. And again, that goes back to your physicality of your run game, and that needs to, pick up. And I think that is another element under Todd Downing that should see an uptick is the run game. Obviously, we need to figure out what the hell's going on up front, but I think the run game is going to get a little boost from Todd Downing.
Yeah, we'll see, right? We'll see what it looks like on Sunday. You certainly would expect an energetic effort from the offense. And so if you don't get it on Monday, the siren should be sounding like loudly. And so we'll see. We'll see what Todd Downing is able to cook up. And if you thought that, firing your head coach, promoting your defensive coordinator, and then changing your offensive play caller was enough, CAA just decides, you know what, Haason Reddick, we're done.
Oh my gosh.
We're done. We are parting ways. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't know how you feel about it, Dylan, but the dude's not on the team. He's not in the building. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. This is proof that the agency is not in support of what he is doing. Haason Reddick wants to hold out because he thinks it's going to lead to some promised land with a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And his agency, or his former agency in CAA, said, you know what? We're done, dude. You've lost a ton of money. You're not getting it back. The Jets are not caving. I mean, everything is falling around this team right now, and they are still not caving, right? Ambassador Johnson on his call this week said, practically begged Haason Reddick to drive down 95, which is not even geographically correct because you would drive up 95, but that's neither here nor there. And said, please drive down I-95, come back to the building. We'll give you an escort.
We'll give you a hug.
He didn't say, Haason, let's get this contract worked out. He didn't say that. He said, Haason, get yourself in the building, which means Woody Johnson is co-signing the position of Joe Douglas of, we're not giving you a contract till you come into the building.
Yep.
That's the takeaway that I have from this is, so guess what? The Jets' position on this isn't changing. Because if it's not changing this week, because Woody Johnson could very easily have been like, you know what, guys? This is a mess. I'm firing Robert Saleh. Joe, I don't care what he wants. Get Haason Reddick in the building. Trade a first-round pick for Devontae Adams. Make it all happen.
He could push all the buttons if he wanted, yeah.
None of the easy buttons. We talk about the easy buttons on offense. The easy buttons as an owner available to Woody Johnson were give Haason Reddick whatever he wants, get him in the building, and trade a first for Devontae Adams. Guess what? It's Friday night. We're doing the show. I don't see Devontae Adams in a Jets uniform. I don't see Haason Reddick in the building. So that means Woody Johnson has co-endorsed the position that Joe Douglas has taken. So that should tell you everything you need to know about the situation. Unless Haason Reddick changes his mind and walks into one Jets drive, it's not happening. Not happening.
And now that you said that, I wonder if this was always Woody's position about Haason Reddick, and Joe Douglas was co-endorsing it to the public for the first time. And now I'm just going to echo what our owner is saying, because he's the one that's people that think that Joe Douglas's name is on the checks that goes to these players. I think it's funny on Twitter. Like, it's not him. It's Woody. So
it says Ambassador Johnson on the check in the bottom.
It says something.
It says Ambassador Johnson. He clearly wants to be referred to it as in the press conference, so we might as well probably sign the checks that way.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just, I think it was more Douglas obviously echoing what the owner wants, but like you said, the owner, he can do whatever he wants. It's his team, and like he did have all those things that he could press. He obviously chose to press the fire Saleh button. Haason Reddick getting dumped by CAA. It's kind of funny. People, poo-poo all over Rodgers for talking about it on McAfee, but a couple weeks later it ends up being true. And it's like, should we just wait and see what happens sometimes? And I don't know. It's tough. It's a weird situation. Haason Reddick's never been smart in this situation, in my opinion. There was a time where I blamed Joe Douglas back in like August for not getting this done, but obviously it's clear now that there's not even his agency was endorsing this move. No. And somebody on Twitter, I don't know how reliable they are, said something about a family member might be, responsible for being in his ear. And whoever it is, I mean, he's costing himself a lot of money. I don't foresee him being a Jet at any point in his, I don't even know if he will play football again. Like, that's how bad the situation has gotten and could potentially get for Haason. So I don't know what the next move could potentially be, but I've never kind of viewed him as a Jet after maybe like week 1 or 2 when he started forfeiting game checks.
Yeah, listen, I don't think he's going to play for the Jets. He might show up to be there for the 6 games so he can accrue the year of service time so he can become a free agent. I think some team will sign him next year. It may not be for the money that he wants, but he's cost himself $10 million right now, and it's only going to increase game by game, and that's on Haason Reddick, and it is what it is, right? The Jets, the Jets defense is not a problem.
No.
Like, we talked about the run defense. Like, Haason Reddick doesn't fix the run defense. Will McDonald is playing out of his mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, would Haason Reddick make the defense better? Yes, absolutely. I'm not going to say he wouldn't. But at the same time, it's like, that's not the thing that's holding the team back. The thing that's holding the team back is the thing that's been holding the team back since I was like 2, which is that they don't have a coherent modern offense.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Getting back to the offense real quick before we get into the Bills preview, because we've already spent too much time on Haason Reddick, I feel. Dano in the chat says, what percentage do we use gap? He means gap run schemes, which was the run scheme that we all thought we were transitioning to with the offensive line. I looked it up on PFF real quick, and I'll double down and go back when I do my play charting for you, Dano, and I'll DM you with the results. But I have 58 zone runs and 43 gap runs. So it's a total of 101. So you're looking at a 59-41 type of split percentage-wise. So almost basically we'll just round and say 60-40 zone. So that's not at all what we thought we were getting as an offense. And you can tell when players are running better in certain schemes. I feel like Braylon has done better in the gap stuff, and Breece has done better in the zone stuff. Maybe film guys could tell me differently. And just looking at their splits specifically, Braylon is almost 50-50 at 18 zone and 14 gap. And then Breece is 37 zone and 28 gap. So they're kind of seeing it how I said it, with more zone going to Breece and, more of a split with Allen. But I think he's more efficient on his gap stuff. But it's just not what we thought from an identity perspective. And I think that's telling. based on, what the information we thought we were getting over the summer and what we've seen over the first 5 games. I feel like that's something that can shift because you need to take advantage of the strengths of your offense, which is the physicality of this offensive line.
Dano, please tell me that you don't want more bait snaps. Please tell me that that's not what you're saying with that comment, because I watched Bates on the first play try to block, and and for those reasons, I'm out. To quote Shark Tank, I'm good. I'm good.
For those reasons,
figure out a different way. To figure out a different way to get 2 tight ends in there to block.
Yeah, Kenny Yeboah back from short-term IR potentially.
Sure,
give me Yeboah at this point.
Yeah, please. That would be much better.
Shout out to Green Bean, because that's been his guy.
All right, I don't want to do this, but let's talk about the Bills game on Monday night. I was really hoping we wouldn't have to go here. I just don't know. Listen, Dylan, you love to do the key players on both sides, and we can potentially do that. They changed play callers. The defensive coordinator's different. Like, how am I supposed to preview a game when everything's changed? You've changed everything about this team right now. So how am I supposed to sit up here and try to tell you what this is going to look like on Monday? I don't know what it's going to look like. You've got a first-time head coach running things. I don't know if the defense is going to look the same. I hope it does. I hope it functions the same way, but I don't know. And so am I going to just blurt out a prediction here and completely ruin this segment? Probably. That's exactly what I'm going to do right now, and then Dylan can pick up the pieces afterwards. I don't think the Jets win this football game. I just don't. I cannot fundamentally get to a place where the Jets win this football game. They've changed their head coach. Their interim head coach used to be their DC. He is now probably going to still call plays on defense this week and also try to run the entire operation as a head coach. And oh, by the way, in the middle of the week, you changed offensive play callers. So the offense is going to look different, at least in terms of who's calling the plays. And I got to tell you, the first pre-snap penalty that this group has with somebody new in Rodgers' ear, I'm going to throw something at the TV. I'm going to throw something through the television. Okay? And I got game 2 of the NLCS with the Mets earlier in the day. So depending on how that goes, I'll already be on edge, ready to throw something through the TV. So you've got that. The defense might have a little bit of, synchronicity issues because you've got a head coach who's now trying to do both. And I got into an argument with somebody on Twitter, and I'm going to read the tweets. I'm going to read the tweets. I saved this for this part of the show.
He bookmarked the tweets.
I quote tweeted Stephen Patton, who does the play caller rankings on both sides of the ball, ranks the play callers, right? So you see who's a good playing call, a good play caller on offense and on defense. And he did the charts through week 5. And Jeff Ulbrich was the 5th ranked defensive play callers. The only people in front of him, Brian Flores, Jeff Hafley, Vance Joseph, and Jesse Minter. So Vikings, Packers, Broncos, Chargers. Then there was Jeff Ulbrich at 5th. I quote tweeted it and said, if there's something that concerns me about Ulbrich becoming the interim head coach, it would be this chart. How much are the Jets going to lose on the defensive side of the ball with him having to focus on head coaching duties? Won't know until Monday. And then shout out to my guy William, who responded with potentially the worst take of all time. How much does Kansas City lose on offense with Reed being the head coach? So then I responded because I couldn't help myself. I responded and I quote tweeted the said tweet. Now I've got to find the thread here because this went on for a little bit. So just stand by here for me. I then quote tweeted this and said, we're certainly not comparing Jeff Ulbrich taking over as interim head coach with the best head coach in the game and arguably a top 5 head coach of all time, are we? And then the response, William doubled down and said, you can compare him to any head coach that calls plays. There's no issue here. You don't think he can handle both fine. Saleh didn't even call plays and struggled. And then this was my final thought, and this is the important thing. There's also a massive difference in the coaching organizational structure in KC in comparison to the Jets. It is beyond reasonable to wonder if the defense could take a step back because of this change. I'm also not going to ignore the fact that Reed has a 4-time Super Bowl champ calling things on the defense, making calling plays and being a head coach a lot easier. Let me know when the Jets have a staff that good. That's the difference. The reason why Andy Reid can be the head coach and the offensive coordinator is because as a head coach, he literally, if he wanted to, and I don't even think he does, he literally could just ignore the defense because he has Steve Spagnuolo, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football, a 4-time Super Bowl champion as a defensive coordinator, and a former head coach. That is what he has on the opposite side of the ball. So yeah, he can focus on the offensive side of the ball and focus on being the head coach and being the game management duties because he has the defensive side covered. Do you really want the way you would compare this is you want Jeff Ulbrich to just focus on the defense, just call plays on the defensive side of the ball, be the head coach, and then just leave the offense to Todd Downing and Nathaniel Hackett. How's that working out for us? It's not, let me tell you. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest because I was arguing with people on Twitter.
No,
prediction.
That's fine. That's
prediction.
Fair. Yes.
The Jets lose this game 27-17.
Okay, 10-point loss. That's fair. I mean, with all the changes, it's fair to not know what to expect.
Dano, I'm going to get you kicked out of the chat because I know what you're doing. You're trolling me, and I'm going to get you thrown out.
There it is. The devil.
I'm going to get you thrown out of the chat.
That's funny. No, I think what you're saying is legitimate to 100%. I mean, the defense right now on a scale of 1 to 10 is playing at a 9, and the offense is playing at like a 3. That's being nice. And then you got to hope that Ulbrich taking over but still continuing being the DC with now Todd Downing, your offense can be between a 5 and a 6. And maybe your defense comes down to a 7.5. And you can get somewhere in that middle range where maybe Ulbrich on that list would be 9 to 12. And he's still in the range of being top play caller, but not, there's going to have to be some kind of dip. Again, to expect a dip on defense, but then an increase on offense is complete hopium on my part. So I don't expect that, but there's going to be some kind of change. You got to just hope that it's closer to being in the middle more so than the defense being still at 9 and the offense still struggling at 3.
Right. And this is not a shot at Jeff Ulbrich, but the example
of course
was Andy Reid. Like Andy Reid's been around a lot
and I'm going to get
Jeff
to
Ulbrich. Jeff Ulbrich
is
a first-time head coach. Like he's got to learn a lot about game management and in-game decision-making and choosing to punt or go for it. Guess what, Jeff? That's on you now, buddy. You got to learn all those numbers. You have to have the person in your headset saying the numbers say we should go for it in this, and this scenario. And you have to take all that information and see where your team's at and go, you know what? I do want to go for it here. You got to make those decisions in real time. And oh, by the way, you then have to this is where people forget how this works. Jeff Ulbrich, as a defensive coordinator, can call the defense. And when the offense is on the field, he can go talk to his defense.
Yes.
He can be like, guys, what worked, what didn't? And we've heard that he does that. He goes to his guys and say, what worked, what didn't, what adjustments do I need to make? We can't do that now. He's the head coach of the football team. He's got to be paying attention to what's going on because he can't leave the offensive staff by themselves. They've proven that they need a babysitter. So that's where this team is at right now. So we'll see. Now, okay, I see people under Todd Downing. The Titans did this in rushing, and they were great in the red zone. He had Derrick Henry, okay? Let's just and I'm not taking anything away from Todd Downing's play calling abilities, but when you have Derrick Henry in the backfield, it does help you a little bit.
So start Breece Hall in fantasy? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, sure. Start Breece Hall in fantasy.
Yeah. No, so obviously the offense, you don't know what to expect. It could be a complete dumpster fire. It could be, the next best thing under Todd Downing. We don't know. History shows us it's probably going to be closer to a dumpster fire, but it's probably not going to be the dumpster fire we've seen the first 5 weeks. Again, does that culminate in a win or does that culminate in a competitive team? I'm not exactly sure. All I know is that if you start fast, you score a touchdown within the first 3 drives. The first 3 drives, please score a fucking touchdown. I didn't mean to curse, but just score a touchdown. Like it's that
how
bad.
You made doing. This is how bad
it's that bad. Like I think it was 4 3-and-outs to start the Minnesota game, and then you get the back-to-back interceptions. So
again, I couldn't get by the first play on the offensive.
That's true.
So
this all 22 is gonna give me nightmares.
No, seriously, tell me how long it takes you to get through the first play because you watch it from both angles. And then you immediately go, oh my goodness, I have to watch this again. And then you just lose 35 minutes because you're like, I have to see this from every angle. And then there's something new every time you watch the play. There's a new player that you want to focus on how poorly they did their job.
And I think that's the part, and that's what gets me, takes me so long to get through all 22 is like, I'm watching it almost damn near 11 times to just see who individually is messing up on each play. So it does take a while. I'm not really looking forward to it. Defensively, I think they're going to be fine. I feel like the chemistry is there. The accountability is going to be there. If Sauce just helps out in the tackling and they're not playing with 10 men in the run game, I feel like that'll help. could we generate a turnover? He almost caught one. Brandon Eccles is the only person that can generate a turnover. So we don't know if we're going to have Michael Carter. Maybe Brandon Eccles is starting in the slot in this game. So there's a chance that we have the turnover guy on the defense already with Brandon Eccles. So I don't know. There's really just so much up in the air to leave. And it's unexpected. And like, we don't, just so many variables, dude. 27-17 sounds right. But I want to say it could be 27-17 Jets. I don't want to be this person. What the hell happened to Josh Allen, and how did he come back onto the field in 30 seconds after being in the 10? I'm not saying that Josh Allen is going to get hurt in the game and that's how the Jets are going to win. But I don't think Josh Allen knows what play he ran when he came back into the huddle. I'm going to be honest.
How that didn't end up with him at least sitting out for a couple of plays is
and that makes me so nervous. And I hate putting it into the fate of injuries and whatnot. But like, when it's a head injury to a quarterback and you're playing a Jets defense that historically has gotten after you, like, I fear. So like, anything can happen in this game. So like, I don't even want to put a score on it. I didn't want to do it last week, and I said 24-23 Jets, which if Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers connected on that pass, we literally would have won 24-23.
Trust me, I was thinking about it as it was going on that was your prediction. I'm
going to just say that this game is going to come down to one possession, and it might not be who has the ball last, but it's going to come down to a key play in the fourth quarter, whether it's the Jets picking off Josh Allen or creating a fumble, or what we saw in Minnesota, which is the Jets struggling to come back, Aaron Rodgers forcing the ball, underthrows Mike Williams when he's supposed to throw back shoulder, leaves it low, and gets picked off to end the game. I feel like those are the only two outcomes. Is like, it's going to come down to a one-possession game, and I feel like that's what happens in the division. So I don't even feel confident putting a score on it. I do think the Jets will lose ultimately, and now we're going to be looking at 2-4. And I said it on Twitter. The negative is 2-4 looks awful. And so many changes need to be made. But I predicted 7-4 at the bye week, and it's still on the table.
Still on the table, technically, mathematically alive. How you mathematically alive. Yep.
It's crazy how I talk myself into these circles, but I still get there. So I'm going to say 6-point margin of victory for the winning team, and it's going to be a dogfight. And I think we can use the mantra all bricked up. No more all gas, no break. It's all bricked up. And I had to change the Twitter profile. I had all gas, no break in there. I changed it immediately. I was like, we're done with this. No more messaging. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. Let's lock arms, like Brick said, and hopefully this team starts fast and gets a win.
I'll be rooting for him, obviously. It's much more fun for us to get on here and talk about a victory and break it down and have hope for this team. But I got to see it, right? I got to see it. I got to see what this new version of this team, if there is a new version of this team, what is it going to look like on Monday? So we'll see. I'm predicting a Jets loss, but I think I would have predicted a Jets loss if everything stayed the same anyway. So I'm not really sure that would have changed my opinion, but we'll see if they win this. Listen, the simple fact is they win this game. Then this is what I'll at least have as my closing statement for the show today. They win this game, they're in first place. It's that simple. Win the game, you're in first place. Where we go from there, I don't know, but you win this game, you're in first place. And you have 3 wins all against teams in the AFC.
The back page of the New York Post saying something along the lines of like first place Ulbrich is just going to hit so nicely on Tuesday morning. So hopefully everybody tuning in has a good weekend. I know it's a little different on a Friday night. Hopefully we'll have Glenn back next week. If not, he'll be back to recap the games. Also check out Chris on his Locked Up New York Sports doing the Jets postcast and the Mets postcast. I was gonna say it's a quiet week all around New York, but it's just too loud to even lie about it. Like whether you're a Mets fan, Yankees fan, Jets fan, Giants fans seem to be turning a corner with their win-loss column. I mean, the Bills are still a New York team. Like things are looking up. I know the Knicks just got Karl Anthony Towns. Some people are kind of iffy about that, but I think they're starting to see the positives of that one. So it's a good time to be a New York team. Hopefully the Jets aren't the laughing stock that I always see, that 3-headed dragon with the goofy eyes, and I see the Jets always as that dragon. So let's change that. Let's start a new leaf with Ulbrich. Let's start on the right foot, get a win against Buffalo, and we're in first place. And we're on here, and the vibes are completely different next week. And we're talking about how we're gonna beat the crap out of Justin Fields and how Zach Wilson led us to Aaron Rodgers and was always the right choice. So everybody for tuning in, we really appreciate you guys. viewership is amazing throughout the season. No matter what, you guys always come through. Like, subscribe, comment. We really appreciate it. Help us get out there a little bit more. And we'll be back next time. And until then, let's go Jets.